Hello dear friends, this is your personal English coach Divyam here, and in this video we will be studying a story written by John Galsworthy, and this is called Quality. Before we move on with the actual story, let's know a little bit of a background about the writer, John Galsworthy. So John Galsworthy OM was an English novelist and a playwright, means the person who writes plays just like Shakespeare. His famous works are Fortnight Saga and its sequels, A Modern Comedy, and End of Chapter. And he won a Nobel Prize in Literature in 1932. He was born on 14th of August 1867, but where? In United Kingdom, and he died on 31st Jan 1933 in Hampstead, London, that's also in United Kingdom. And a couple of famous quotes which are my personal favorite written by John Galsworthy include, "Love has no age, no limit, and no death." Second one is something like, "If you do not think about your future, you cannot have one." Such a profound writer, such a profound thought behind his quotes. Having understood a little bit about the background of this writer, let's move on with the actual story. I knew him from the days of my extreme youth. So here, who is speaking? It's the writer himself. The writer knew somebody from the time when he was very, very young, from childhood, because he had made my father's boots inhabiting with his elder brother. So what is the meaning of inhabit? Inhabit is to live in or occupy a place or an environment. So here we get to know that the writer knew a person whom we do not know at this point from the days of his childhood. The reason is because that person had made the writer's shoes or boots living with his elder brother. Two little shops let into one, which means there were two shops, but they must have broken down the middle wall to make it one. In a small by street now no more, which means when the author was young, there was this shop, a very small shop. There were two shops and they were made into one, and it was a by street, which means it is not a main road kind of. It is just a street which is nearby, and it doesn't exist now when the writer is putting down his thoughts on a paper, but then most fashionably placed in the West End. So during the time when he was young, this little shop was a fashion area, or you can say a fashion street, where people would come in huge numbers. The tenement had a certain quiet distinction. So what is a tenement? It is a room or a set of rooms forming a separate residence within the house or block of flats. So the place where this shop store existed, it was quite distinct, which means it was different from the normal shop. And how? There was no sign upon his face that he made for any of the royal family, merely his own German name of Gessler Brothers, and in the window a few pair of boots. So if there's a big shoes company nowadays, you must have seen Nike and Puma, right? They have huge shops inside the malls, but this shop, even though they made shoes or boots for royal families, they didn't mention it anywhere. It didn't look from the appearance that the shop was in process of making boots for royal families. It just had one board, and on that board was just a German name written, Gessler Brothers. There was just one board on which this name was written, and there was a window onto which a few pairs of boots hung, so that other people or the passers-by knew that this shop is making or selling shoes or boots. I remember that it always troubled me to account for those unvarying boots in the window. The meaning of unvarying is not changing or constant. What you can do is pause my video and write down these meanings. For he made only what was ordered, reaching nothing down, and it seemed so inconceivable that what he made could ever have failed to fit. Meaning of inconceivable is not capable of being imagined or grasped mentally. In short, it is unbelievable. So what is unbelievable for this author? It is unbelievable for this author that the boots which were hung near the window were so perfect. And what else surprised this author? The fact that Gessler Brothers made boots only when they got orders. Nothing less, nothing more than that. So it's not something like they had lots and lots of pairs of shoes inside their shops and people would come and purchase. No, there was just a sample pieces hung near the window, and they would get orders and they would start making there and then. And the last line, it seems so inconceivable, unbelievable, that if they made something, it would definitely fit. It's impossible that if they make something, it is not suited to the customers. So they made the boots perfectly. Had he bought them to put up there? That too seemed inconceivable. So the boots that were hanging were so fine that the writer thought might have been bought from somewhere and must have kept as a showpiece. But even that looked unbelievable to him. He would never have tolerated in his house leather on which he had not worked himself. So these Gessler brothers would not allow any piece, any product on which they themselves did not put their efforts. So it is very clear that the boots that were there near the window were made by them. But the best part is they were perfect and as if they were made from a factory. Besides, they were too beautiful, the pair of pumps, so inexpressibly slim. So this is what a pair of pumps look like. You can imagine something like this hanging near the shop window. And what else? They were too beautiful, inexpressibly. You cannot put it into words how beautiful these shoes were. So it looks like the author has love for items or products, and especially shoes, because the description is nice. The patent leather with cloth tops making water come into one's mouth. So this means it is very attractive to make something by which water comes to one's mouth. Does it mean that are you going to eat it? Is the writer going to eat it? No, it just means that the shoes are very attractive. The tall brown riding boots with marvelous sooty glow, as if though new they had been worn 100 years. So the word sooty comes from the word soot, which means a deep black powdery substance. There is a large amount of carbon in it, so when you put this on something, it shines. And to the onlooker, these shoes looked new, but in fact they had been worn 100 years. So they had been worn a couple of times, but when you look at those shoes, they looked very new, shining and marvelous. Those pairs could only have been made by one who saw before him the soul of boot, meaning only that person could make such a marvelous pair, who knows the real art, who has beauty in his heart, especially about shoes. So truly were they prototypes, incarnating the very spirit of all foot gear. Prototype meaning a first or preliminary version of something. Incarnation is used when we talk about gods and goddesses. So incarnate meaning embodied in human form. So these shoes looked as if they were the first of their kind, and they had the spirit of foot gear into them. They had a soul of foot gear into them. These thoughts, of course, came to me later, though even when I was promoted to him at the age of perhaps 14, some inkling haunted me of the dignity of himself and the brother. So what is the meaning of I was promoted to him? Which means I was allowed to go to him. Here it would mean that. So when the writer was a child, he knew about these brothers, but when was he allowed to go to them? At the age of 14. What is inkling? Inkling is a slight knowledge or suspicion, a hint. So when you see people working on a very small task, we feel pity for them, right? We feel what about their respect, what about their dignity in the society? So when at the age of 14, when this writer went inside the shop and inquired about their respect, he felt he should ask them, what about your dignity? Do people respect you? Don't you feel that the work that you're doing is small and is mundane? For to make boots, such boots as he made seem to me then, and still seems to me, mysterious and wonderful. So the writer had love for their work, and so he had a thought in his mind: do people really respect them? Do these brothers have dignity? Because he would think about this question for only one reason, because whatever they did was very much wonderful, was absolutely a masterpiece. I remember well my shy remark, which means hesitantly asking them one day while stretching out to him my youthful foot. So it's fairly possible that the writer himself went to the shop and he wanted to make boots, so he stretched his feet out, and when he was doing that, he asked this question out of shyness, because this question always haunted the writer, always was in his mind. Isn't it awfully hard to do, Mr. Gessler? So whatever you're doing, like the boots that you're making, isn't it a tough task for you? His answer, given with a sudden smile from out of the sardonic redness of his beard. What is sardonic? It's grimly mocking or cynical. So it's like joking. It is an art, which means it is an art. Shoes making or boot making is an art. That's what he replied. Himself, he was a little as if made from leather, which means Gessler brother, one of the Gessler brothers, he had a short height and his skin was as if it is made of leather. Maybe a little tough, little shiny, having the properties of leather, with his yellow, crinkly face. Crinkly is wrinkled, having a lot of wrinkles. So when you age, or you must have seen your grandfather or grandmother having a lot of wrinkles on their faces because the skin becomes older. So similarly, this person also had a crinkly face, crinkly reddish hair. So again, maybe very curly reddish hair and beard, neat folds slanting down his cheeks to the corner of his mouth, and his guttural and one-toned voice. So this is pronounced as guttural, which means produced in the throat, harsh sounding. So his voice was hoarse, is called guttural. One-tone voice of his mouth. For leather is sardonic substance. Again, the meaning of sardonic is grimly mocking or cynical, and stiff and slow of purpose. So here the writer has just described or elaborated this Gessler Brothers appearance: small height, red hair, and crinkly face full of wrinkles. It was yellow, it was pale, he had a beard, and these folds were slanting down his cheeks. And that was the character of his face. These were the properties of his face, save that his eyes, which were grey blue, his eyes were grey blue in color, had in them the simple gravity of one secretly possessed by the ideal. So what is an ideal? Ideal means, if it is used as an adjective, It is satisfying one's conception of what is perfect, most suitable. So if you look at this person's eyes, who was actually a boot maker in a small shop, you would feel that his eyes are reflecting that of a person who is possessed by imagination, possessed by perfection for his art. His elder brother was so very like him, though watery, paler in every way, which means his elder brother was weaker, obviously, because the brother is elder and has more age, so he was paler, with a great industry that sometimes in early days when I was not quite sure of him until the interview was over. Industry you already know. Now it can be a production, fabrication, but here industry, we say a person is industrious, which means the person is a hard worker. So here it means hard work. So he was so hardworking, so busy that the writer never knew about this man until he showed up. He would always be busy, he was industrious, he would always be working. So how did the writer come to know that this person has an elder brother? Then I knew that it was he. If the words "I will ask my brother" had not been spoken, and that if they had, it was his elder brother. So the writer got to know about this bootmaker's elder brother when the younger one said, or maybe the younger one would have been inquired about something, and then he said, "I don't know about this, let me ask my brother." So that's the reason how this writer got to know that this person also has an elder brother. When one grew old and wild and ran up bills, one somehow never ran them up with Gessler Brothers. One somehow never ran them up with Gessler Brothers. Now here there's a phrase, to run up. Run up is actually a phrase which means the period of time just before an important event. And there is one more meaning here, run up a debt or bill, etc. To use so much of something or borrow so much money that you owe a lot of money. So this sentence means that one grew mature, grew old, and he gets married and he has children and he has to run the house, so he tries to purchase things maybe on loans and EMIs, and when he has to owe means he has to give money to a lot of people. In the case of Gessler brother, it is never like that. That person always paid his bills on time. Again, what is the reason? It's very possible that the person was a fan of Gessler Brothers' works and the person did not want his equation with Gessler brother to get spoiled. Now, this sentence is a little bit tricky. It would not have seemed becoming to go in there and stretch out one's foot to that blue iron spectacled glance, owing him for more than, say, 2 pairs, just the comfortable reassurance that one was still his client. Did you understand the sentence? Let me make it very simple. Now this sentence has a similar meaning. If a person started receiving boosts from Gessler Brothers, they would instantly become their fans, and it would never be a condition or a situation where they would have to owe them or give them a lot of money. The person would want to be their clients forever. So let's understand the first part. It would not have seemed becoming, means it would never happen that a person gets into the shop of the Gessler Brothers and then gives him an order of preparing shoes, and Gessler brother would ask them to stretch their legs for measurements, and the glance or the look at which Gessler brother observed the legs from their iron spectacle means giving a strong and a perfect look,
Means this condition, stretching the legs and giving them measurements, would not have seen becoming, would not be possible if a person was owing Gessler brother money for 2 pairs of shoes that they made in the past, which means a person always wanted to be the client of Gessler brother, so they never had any outstanding amount with them, for it was not possible to go to him very often. His boots lasted terribly, having something beyond temporary, some as it were essence of boot stitched into them. If a person made boots from the Gessler brother, there was a problem, and it was a nice problem. What is it? The boots were so perfect, were so nice, were so durable, it had so many qualities that the person or the same client would not have to go to them again for repairs, for mending, because they lasted very long and they were not temporary. They were not like other ordinary shoes which people made. They were special, made with perfection, made with a lot of focus. So there's a word, essence. Or what is the meaning of essence? Essence means soul, spirit, nature, life. The intrinsic nature, indispensable quality of something. Yes, the chapter's name is quality. So whichever shoes the Gessler brother made were of the best quality. One went in, not as in most shops, in the mood of, please serve me and let me go, but restfully as one enters a church, and sitting on the single wooden chair, waited, for there was never anybody there. So how would people visit this small shop? It's not like the other ordinary shops where they would come and they would ask for the thing they want and leave. They'll have a feeling that serve me, give me what I want, and I will exit. No, it was not like that. In this small shop, people would enter and usually there was nobody downstairs. So they would wait. And why they would wait? Because they knew that the boots will be made of perfect quality, and such boots will never be made by anybody else in that area. So it's as if going to a church and waiting patiently for the pastor to arrive, and there was a single wooden chair. As we discussed earlier, the shop was not too big, it was small, so there was single wooden chair. It's not like a grand shop with a lot of sofas in it and mirrors in it. There was just this wooden chair and people would sit, and there was nobody usually, there's a receptionist in most of the shops. No, it was not the case. There was just single wooden chair, people would wait. Soon, over the top edge of that sort of, well, rather dark and smelling soothingly of leather which formed the shop, there would be seen his face or that of his elder brother peering down. So once these Gessler brother sensed that there is somebody sitting in the shop waiting for them, then there was this edge of the wall. But here the author has said well. So why? He has stated well because the shop was small and it looked as if it's an open well, and somebody, you can imagine there's a boundary of a well and somebody would peep just to check if there's any customer. So from that edge of the well, and how was it smelling? It was smelling of leather. Somebody would peep out. Either of the brothers would peep out and check, who is it? A guttural sound and the tip-tap of blast slippers beating the narrow wooden stairs, and he would stand before one without coat, little bent in leather apron with sleeves turned back, blinking as if awakened from some dream of boots, like an owl surprised in daylight and annoyed at this interruption. Guttural is pronounced as
guttural, guttural,
guttural. So it's the right pronunciation. So that means produced in throat, harsh sounding. So I believe I said blast, but it is bast slippers. Yes, this is what they look like. which means one of the brothers would come out as soon as they saw the customer with their husky and hoarse voice, and that was also accompanied by the slippers beating, means made of the slippers. The slippers would make a sound like tip tap, tip tap. It's like you can imagine in movies you must have seen when a person walks, the same kind of sound is produced. So with the sound of their bast slippers and a guttural sound which would be made on their narrow wooden steps, one of the Gessler brothers would come out, and he would not be wearing a coat. He was a little bent, maybe because of his age, and all he was wearing is a leather apron. So how does a leather apron look like? Yes, this is what it looks like, with the sleeves turned back. Yes, if you're wearing a full sleeve t-shirt, and if you are, say for example, eating or working, you don't want your clothes to get dirty, so you turn them back, right? Blinking as if somebody awoke him from a good night's sleep wherein he was dreaming about shoes. So this is just a metaphor. Now if a person sleeps, he doesn't dream of shoes, right? But this is just praises for Gessler brother. The brothers were so good in their work that when they came out to meet the customer, it looked as if somebody woke them from sleep and they were having a good night's sleep, and they were dreaming about shoes and how they are made, and they would be annoyed. Now if you're focused maybe in your studies, and if somebody disturbs you, you get annoyed, right? Similarly, it looked as if these brothers were focused in thinking about shoes, and the customer's entrance annoyed them. So that was a look on their face. And I would say, how do you do, Mr. Gessler? Could you please make me a pair of Russia leather boots? So now here the author himself has gone into the shop and greets Mr. Gessler, and then demands for a pair of Russia leather boots to be made. Without a word he would leave me, retiring whence he came or into other portion of the shop, and I would... Without a word he would leave me, retiring whence he came or into the other portion of the shop, and I would continue to rest in the wooden chair, inhaling the incense of his trade. So meaning of whence is from what place or source. So we can say, whence does Parliament derive this power? From what place or source does the Parliament derive this power? Or from where, you can say. So retiring whence he came means retiring from the same place he came. So now imagine the scenario. As a customer, you go inside and there's nobody in the shop. You wait in the chair, which is small and wooden. You hear a husky voice and a tip tap of the bast slippers. A person would come with his leather apron and you demand. You first of all greet, how do you do, Mr. Gessler? And then you say, could you please make me a pair of Russia leather boots? Now one of the Gessler brother did not respond you, and he went back to the place he came from, or into other portion of the shop where this leather was placed, and you would have to continue to rest and wait, inhaling the incense of his trade. So what is incense? Gum, spice or other substance. In our case it's the leather that is burned for sweet smell it produces. So you can just imagine fragrance of not really fragrance, but the smell of leather, and here the author has chosen words nicely. Incense of his trade. So in the shop we obviously know that there was business going on. So incense means smell of his business, means smell of leather and smell of all the products that were there inside the shop. Soon he would come back, holding in his thin veined hand a piece of gold brown leather. So here Gessler Brothers' hands are described. They were thin, veined. So you see your veins in your hands, isn't it? when you go to the doctor for getting an injection, right? And the doctor makes you sit on a stool or a chair or on a bed, and then he tries to find your vein through which he can inject the injection. So similarly, you can see the veins, you can see blue colored veins in your hands and legs. But as we know, Gessler Brothers were old, so all the veins were clearly visible, and hands were thin and veins were visible, and in those hands was a beautiful gold brown Russian leather which the author had asked for. But eyes fixed on it, because he was lost in the leather, he would remark, "What a beautiful piece, what a beautiful piece," it means. So in every paragraph, every sentence, we can easily feel how passionate these brothers would be in their business. When I too had admired it, he would speak again. "When do you want them?" So Gessler Brother is asking the author, when do you want these Russian leather shoes to be made? And the author would answer, "Oh, as soon as you conveniently can." And he would say, "Tomorrow fortnight." So what is a fortnight? A British word which means a period of 2 weeks. Or if you're talking informally, which is in our case, used to indicate that something will take place 2 weeks after that day. So here I believe it means 14 days after tomorrow. So this was the case when the elder brother had come to meet the author. If it was the younger brother, then he would say, "I will ask my brother." So, or if he were his elder brother, he would say, "I will ask my brother. I will ask my brother when can he deliver the shoes." Then I would murmur, "Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Gessler. Good morning." So Gessler Brother would respond good morning, but he would be looking at the leather in his hand, lost in its grandeur. And I moved to the door. I would hear the tip-tap of his bast slippers restoring him up the stairs to his dream boots. So as the author left, after giving the order, after deciding the date of delivery, he would hear the tip-tap of the slippers noise which is made when it tapped the wooden floor of his shop or wooden stairs. And restoring him means taking him back to the place where he came from, to dream of his boots. Yes, he was passionate about his boots, so according to the author, he goes back to the place and dreams about those boots again. But if it were some new kind of footgear that he had not yet made, then indeed he would observe ceremony. Divesting me of my boot and holding it long in his hand, looking at it with eyes at once critical and loving, as if recalling the glow with which he had created, and rebuking the way in which one had disorganized this masterpiece. Meaning of divest is deprive someone of. Now you already know the meaning of ceremony, right? It's a formal, religious or public occasion. So let's understand the first part of the sentence. If it were some new kind of footgear, means if it was something new that Gessler Brother had never made him, means the author. If that was the case, then Gessler Brother would observe the pair given to them. So you can imagine the author getting inside a shop and removing his footwear and giving the Gessler Brother that the orders or the demand of new kind of shoes. Then Gessler Brother would hold the author's shoe in his hand, which means deprive the author of his own boots, and Gessler Brother would hold it and observe it religiously, and he would compare those boots with his work, and then he would rebuke, means he would dislike the way in which one had spoiled the masterpiece. But what happens after that? Let's connect these two sentences. Then placing my foot on a piece of paper, he would to or 3 times tickle the outer edges with a pencil and passes nervous fingers over my toes, feeling himself into the heart of my requirements. So this is how Gessler brother took measurements. He would ask the customer to keep their foot on a piece of paper and tickle. Meaning of tickle is lightly touch or prod in a way that causes mild discomfort and often laughter. So Gessler brother would tickle the author's toes with his nervous finger because of the age, right? And nervous also because Gessler brother believed in perfection. The measurements should not go wrong. So the fingers were nervous, and when he was doing that, he was putting his heart, his soul, his mind into the requirement. So now let's connect these two sentences. Yeah, you can imagine the author getting inside the shop and giving an order of something that Gessler brother had never made. Okay, if that was the case, then Gessler brother would ask the author to remove the shoes that he was wearing currently, and he would observe that shoe as if, you know, he had made himself, and then he would rebuke, means he was dislike the way in which it is disorganized or disoriented, and after that he would ask the author to place his naked feet on a piece of paper, where he would take his pencil and do the measurements and put his heart out. I cannot forget that day on which I had occasion to say to him, Mr. Gessler, that last pair of town walking boots creaked, you know. So how do these town walking boots look like? This is how they look like. And you must be aware about the meaning of creak. It means make a harsh, high-pitched sound when being moved or when pressurized or weight is applied. So because of the weight of the author, the shoes which the Gessler brother had made, they made noise. So the author told one of the Gessler brothers that the shoes, also the last pair of shoes which I took from you, the last pair of boots which I took from you, they made noise. That's what the author complained. He looked at me for a time without replying, as if expecting me to withdraw or qualify the statement, then said, "It shouldn't have creaked." Now, we know that Gessler brothers were perfect at their work. At least that's what the customer felt, and they hardly received any complaints. Now, the author, once upon a time, went to them and got them make a town walking shoe, town walking boot, but they creaked. So the author complained that the boots that you made, the boots that I received from you, the last pair, they made noise while I walked. So these Gessler brother couldn't believe that somebody is complaining, and so Gessler brother waited for a while in order for the author to take back the statement or maybe correct himself, and then he reassured it should not have creaked, it should not have made noise. The author said, "It did, I'm afraid." Means the shoes did creak, they did make noise. I believe it means you got them wet before they found themselves. Did you place them in water? Did you place them under the rain? The author said, "I don't think so." At that, he lowered his eyes as if hunting for memory of those boots, and I felt sorry I had mentioned this grave thing. As we know, the author complained. What was the grave thing? The grave thing is, "I'm afraid your shoes, your boots made noise." Now, if a person is doing his work near perfection, and if you complain, then that person would diligently think about what went wrong. So the same was with Gessler brother. This brother was trying to recall when did he last make shoes for the author. Lowering his eyes, giving a serious look, he was trying to recall, and at that time the author felt so sorry in his heart. He felt, why did I say this? "Send them back," he said. "I will look at them." So give me those pair of shoes again and I will fix it. Give it to me back. A feeling of compassion for my creaking boots surged up in me so well. Could I imagine the sorrowful long curiosity of regard which he would bend on them? So, till this point, the author felt annoyed and angry as to why the town walking shoes creaked. But now, the author was feeling compassion for the same boots. Why? Because there was a person who made it. There was this Gessler brother who would be eagerly waiting for the author to bring those creaking boots back so that he can fix it. And the waiting was a sorrowful wait because Gessler brother knew that they had made these shoes with perfection. So they were waiting eagerly. So what's the next interesting thing that the Gessler brothers said? He said, "Some boots," he said slowly, "are bad from birth. If I can do nothing with them, I take them off your bill." Which means there are some boots which are bad from the birth, are bad from the product itself. So if you bring me those creaking shoes and if I'm not able to fix it, I'm going to deduct the money that you gave me. I'm going to deduct the bill. I'm going to waive off the bill. Maybe I'll give you the cash back if I can do nothing with them. Once only, I went absent-mindedly into his shop in a pair of boots bought in an emergency at some large firms. He took my order without showing me any leather, and I could feel his eyes penetrating the inferior integument of my foot. So what is integument? It's a tough outer protective layer, especially that of an animal or plant. So what is the usage of this word here? Inferior integument of my foot. Which means the boot themselves which were bought from some large firm. So once the author wore shoes which the Gessler brother had not made it, and then he placed the order, he didn't realize that he should not have worn shoes which are not bought from the Gessler brothers store. Goes inside and places the order. So usually the Gessler brother would passionately bring the leather and show the variety of leather, but this time Gessler brother looked at the feet and especially the inferior integument. Inferior means not of the good quality, not of a perfect quality according to the Gessler brother. Integument is a cover, so inferior integument would mean boots of my foot. And he said, "Those are not my boots," which means these are not the boots which I have made. And so there was no interest in showing the author the leather or being interested in the author's demands or request. The tone was not of one of anger nor of sorrow, not even of contempt, but there was in it something quiet that froze the blood. So what happens when you regularly visit a shop? The shopkeeper is your friend, and for example, if you're trying to purchase books from the same shop and absent-mindedly you have some books in your hand and you go to the same shop and the shopkeeper looks at you, and in India definitely the shopkeeper would ask, "Ye kahan se liya? From where did you buy these books?" Because well, there is no anger, there is no sorrow. He's a shopkeeper, he has to do his duty. But they will feel bad. Why did you purchase these books from someone else? So similarly, there was something quiet and something that froze the blood of the Gessler brother. Why did this man not choose my shop even when I'm putting my heart, mind and soul into my work? He purchased boots from somewhere else, so he was feeling bad. He put his hands down and pressed a finger on the place where the left foot, endeavoring to be fashionable, was not quite comfortable. Left boot was not quite comfortable. So he looked at it once. He looked at the pair of shoes which the author had brought from the emergency store once and bent down and he pressed his finger into the area which lacked perfection on the left leg. But there is a phrase here, endeavoring to be fashionable, claiming that these are fashionable shoes. So according to the Gessler brother, these shoes were fashionable, but they lacked perfection because finger on the place where the left boot was not quite comfortable, because Gessler brother found the flaw. It hurts you there, he said. Those big worms have no self-respect. Dash. Which means it hurts you there, where my finger is placed. It hurts you. It's not comfortable. These big firms have no self-respect. They're not making their work well. They're not perfect. They're not giving you optimum products. They are deceiving you. Dash is nothing but damn. Something that we say when we are pissed off. That is damn. They don't have any perfection, any self-respect. And then, as if something had given way within them, he spoke long and bitterly. It was the only time I ever heard him discuss the condition and hardships of his trade. So let's go back to the shopkeeper who sold books to you, right? Now the shopkeeper is putting all his hard work into getting those books for you, and you take it from a bigger firm, all right? So now the shopkeeper will feel bad. He will pretend not to be sad, but he will be somewhere in his heart be frozen, and when he cannot control any longer, he will speak everything out to you from his heart. Similarly, this man, Gessler brother, he spoke bitterly. And that was the only time the author knew about the hardship, the troubles that were there, that were existing in his business. They get it all, he said. They get it by advertisement, not by work. They take it away from us, who love our bloods. It comes to this. Presently, I have no work. Every year it gets less, you will see. So, we know this Gessler brother has a small shop. They have no money for publicity. They have no money to make up banners with the phone numbers below it, you know, something like contact us for making up the booths. They cannot publish commercials and stuff. They have this one shop. They take orders, they make booths, and if people are happy, they come again. That's how the publicity happens, word to mouth. So Gessler brother, he was bitter and angry this time and said, these big firms, they get it all by advertisements in TV, newspaper, radio, and these big firms are taking away from us. They are taking money, they are taking our business from us. Now people who loved our business, loved our booths, are visiting those firms now, and presently I do not have any work. Every year it gets less and less and less, and you will see that my shop is not having that much business as it had before because of these large firms. And looking at his lined face, I saw things I had never noticed before, bitter things and bitter struggle, and what a lot of gray hairs there seemed suddenly in his red beard. So you see, when does a person have a lot of wrinkles? When does a person get hair on his head? It's when a person is stressed. It's when he is tensed. And it looked as if these Gessler brothers were tense because now there was no business because of these large firms. And what was the mistake of the author? Author's mistake was he went in absent-mindedly, wearing those shoes which he had bought in emergency from the large firms. He should not have done that. As best I could, I explained the circumstances of the purchase of those ill-omened boots. But his face and voice made so deep impression that during the next few minutes, I ordered many pairs. So the author understood the agony, the tension, the stress, the adversity that these brothers were in. And And the author said, well, once upon a time I was in a hurry and I had forgotten the boots that you made. So then I saw a shop and immediately got the boots which I saw. I didn't mean to buy boots from the large firms. I always come to you. So the author made up some explanation. And why are the boots ill-omened? Because the Gessler brother felt bad by looking at it. So the author has termed those boots as ill-omened. But his face and voice made so deep impression that during next few minutes I ordered many pairs. Looking at the face of a Gessler brother, looking at his voice, the sad tone, the author felt so bad that even when he did not wanted to buy many boots, he bought a couple of them. He understood that two perfect people who make shoes, putting their heart and soul in it, I am really doing some injustice to them. So let me give them some money by purchasing those boots. So they ordered many pairs. Nemesis fell. They lasted more terribly than ever. What is the meaning of nemesis? Let's check it out. Something that a person cannot conquer, achieve. The performance tested proved to be my nemesis. There's another meaning, an opponent or rival whom a person cannot beat or overcome. So, you know that Gessler Brothers boots, they last for a long time. Now this author had purchased many boots. So they lasted for a long time. And the author was not able to conscientiously go to him for the next 2 years. Friends, I should tell you that this chapter has so many important words that you can learn. You can master your vocabulary by these. Meaning of conscientious.
Conscientious.
Conscientious is a British pronunciation maybe.
Conscientious.
Wishing to do one's work or duty well and truly. Meaning is diligent, industrious, painstaking. Now, this is a good word but maybe a little difficult to pronounce. Let's hear it again.
Conscientious.
Conscientious. Alright, so I was not able to conscientiously to go to him for nearly 2 years. So even if the author wanted to visit him, no, he couldn't. Alright friends, we're going to continue from this paragraph onwards in part 2. I should say this chapter is all about quality, dedication, perseverance and hard work. I am enjoying it myself. I hope you are too. I hope you have a wonderful day.